A poor black woman boards a Mafia boss yacht by mistake. Now she's on a romantic trip in Paris with him. What started as a desperate catering job to save her brother turned into a nightmare when she woke up in the middle of the ocean, captive to one of the most dangerous men in the criminal underworld. Forced to pose as his girlfriend at high society events, she becomes his unexpected asset, spotting traitors his trained men miss. But as bullets fly and passion ignites, she discovers a shocking truth. He knew about her brother's gambling debts all along and had plans for her before she ever stepped foot on his yacht. When she uncovers documents revealing his organization plans to destroy her neighborhood in Harlem, she must make an impossible choice. Is this growing attraction real, or is she just a pawn in a deadly game between rival crime families? And when the final betrayal comes from within his inner circle, will their dangerous connection be what saves them or destroys them both? The gentle rocking motion stirred Zara from her exhausted slumber. Her eyes fluttered open, mind fuzzy with lingering fatigue. Something felt wrong. The luxurious stateroom where she'd dozed off came into focus. Cream leather seats, polished mahogany tables, and floor-to-ceiling windows that revealed endless blue water. Her heart stopped. No, this couldn't be happening. Zara bolted upright, pressing her hands against the cold glass. Ocean stretched in every direction, no hint of the New York skyline or any land at all. Panic clawed up her throat as the full horror of her situation hit her. Oh God, she whispered, fumbling for her phone. The black screen mocked her, still dead, useless. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her bag, dumping the contents onto the leather seat. Makeup, wallet, tablet, portable charger. She jammed the cable into her phone, praying it would turn on quickly. The boat's subtle vibration beneath her feet meant the engines were running. How long had she been asleep? Where were they taking her? The memory of those guests, their expensive suits, the foreign languages, the armed security, took on a terrifying new significance. This was no corporate event. She'd walked right into something dangerous, something illegal. Marcus. The thought of her brother sent fresh waves of fear through her. He'd been acting strange lately, desperate for money, making those late-night calls. Had his trouble somehow led to this? Zara forced herself to take deep breaths, to think clearly despite her racing heart. She was alone on a yacht with people who clearly didn't want their activities known. Her phone would take precious minutes to charge enough to function. She needed to figure out what was happening without alerting anyone to her presence. Moving silently, she crept to the stateroom door and pressed her ear against it. Distant voices carried through the wood, still speaking Italian. Her catering training kicked in as she recognized words from menu planning. Preparare, prepare, aspettare, wait. But the tone was all wrong, sharp, angry. The lock clicked. Zara scrambled back as the door swung open, revealing a tall man in a black suit. His cold eyes widened slightly, the only indication of surprise on his otherwise impassive face. Sir, he called out in heavily accented English, never taking his gaze off Zara. We have a situation. Heavy footsteps approached. Zara backed away until her legs hit the leather seat, her mind racing for explanations, excuses, anything. She was just the caterer. She'd fallen asleep by accident. She meant no harm. The man who appeared in the doorway made her words die in her throat. He was younger than she expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair and aristocratic features that might have been handsome, if not for the dangerous intelligence in his eyes. Power radiated from his perfectly tailored suit, his controlled movements, the way his security man deferred to him instantly. Well, he said softly, his voice carrying only a hint of an Italian accent. What do we have here? Zara lifted her chin, fighting to keep her voice steady. I'm the event planner from last night. I just fell asleep after cleaning up. If you'll just return to port, I'll... The event planner. He studied her with unnerving intensity. Who hired you? Corporate Events Limited. They're a booking agency I work with sometimes for last-minute jobs. The words tumbled out. I didn't mean to. Phone. He held out his hand expectantly. It's dead, Zara said, gesturing to where it lay connected to her portable charger. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then we'll wait for it to charge. I'm very interested in who exactly arranged for you to be here. The implications in his tone made her shiver. Zara glanced between him and the armed security man still blocking the door. The yacht's engines hummed steadily, carrying her further from safety with each passing second. Please, she tried again. I don't know anything about... Whatever this is, I just needed the money because my brother— She stopped abruptly, realizing too late she shouldn't have mentioned Marcus. The man's expression sharpened. Your brother? He's not involved, Zara said quickly. He's been having some financial trouble. That's why I took this job. I'm just a caterer, I swear. He stepped closer, and Zara had to force herself not to retreat further. He smelled expensive, subtle cologne, mixed with something uniquely masculine. What's your name? Zara Williams. Well, Miss Williams. He picked up her phone, examining the dark screen. I'm afraid we have a problem. You see, I can't simply take your word that you're just a caterer. Not given the sensitive nature of today's activities. So you'll be staying with us until I'm satisfied you're telling the truth. Terror wrapped icy fingers around her heart. For how long? That depends entirely on what I find when this phone charges. His smile was practiced, predatory. I suggest you pray your story checks out. The security man moved aside as his boss turned to leave. In the doorway, the Italian paused, glancing back at her. I'm Matteo, by the way. Welcome aboard. The door clicked shut. Zara heard the distinct sound of a lock engaging, trapping her inside the luxurious prison cell the stateroom had become. She sank onto the leather seat, staring at her phone as it slowly charged, knowing her entire future now depended on what Matteo found on it. The ocean stretched endlessly beyond the windows, New York in safety far behind her. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably wondering why she hadn't called to check on him. Would anyone even realize she was missing? How long before someone raised the alarm? The yacht's engines thrummed steadily, carrying her deeper into a world she never meant to enter, with no way back. Zara's heels clicked against the polished deck as she rushed from one empty corridor to another. The morning sun sparkled off the ocean, mocking her growing panic. 2 crew members in crisp white uniforms passed by, their eyes sliding past her as if she were invisible. Please, I need to speak to someone in charge, she called after them. They kept walking. Her heart pounding, she climbed to the upper deck where a lone sailor was coiling rope. Excuse me? No English, he muttered, turning away. She spotted another crew member emerging from a door marked Staff Only. This time, she planted herself directly in his path. I demand to speak to whoever's in charge of this vessel. The man's expression remained neutral, but he touched his earpiece. Sir, the woman is requesting to speak with you. A pause. Yes, sir. He gestured for Zara to follow. Her stomach churned as they climbed to the highest deck. The crewman opened an ornate door, revealing a master suite that screamed wealth and power, all dark woods, cream leather, and gleaming brass fixtures. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the endless ocean. A man stood at those windows, his back to her. Even from behind, his presence commanded attention. Tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly tailored suit, highlighting his athletic build. When he turned, Zara's breath caught. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with classical Italian features that might have been handsome, if not for his eyes. They were cold gray that assessed her with predatory calculation. Leave us, he said to the crewman, his Italian accent subtle but distinct. Once they were alone, he smiled, but it didn't touch those cold eyes. Miss Williams, I trust you slept well? How do you know my name? I make it my business to know everything about uninvited guests on my yacht. He moved to a leather chair, gesturing for her to sit opposite him. It wasn't a request. Zara remained standing. This is kidnapping. I'm an American citizen who may or may not be working for Viktor Sokolov. His tone hardened. Tell me, did they think I wouldn't notice a spy before such a crucial meeting? I'm not a spy. I told you, I'm just an event planner. Corporate Events Limited hired me. Ah, yes, this mysterious agency. He pulled out his phone, dialing quickly. Paolo, the agency that arranged last night's catering. Clean up that loose end. He ended the call, ignoring Zara's horrified expression. What does that mean, clean up? It means you should hope you're telling the truth about being an innocent bystander. He studied her. Though I find it interesting that someone with your background would accept such a suspicious job. Memories flashed through Zara's mind, standing in her tiny Harlem apartment 3 days ago, staring at her depleted bank account. The phone call from Marcus at midnight, his voice tight with poorly concealed fear. Sis, I know things are tight, but I need 10 grand. Fast. She'd been running herself ragged, trying to keep her fledgling business afloat while supporting Marcus through college. When Corporate Events Limited called offering $5,000 for one night's work, it had seemed like a miracle. She should have known better. My brother, She started, then stopped herself. The less this dangerous man knew about Marcus, the better. Yes, Marcus Williams, age 22, engineering student at City College. Mateo's smile widened at her shock. Currently owing significant gambling debts to some very unpleasant people. Is that why you took this job without asking questions? Desperate for quick cash to bail him out? Zara sank into the chair, legs weak. How do you know all this? I've had my people investigating you since we found you this morning. The job offer was indeed a setup, but not specifically targeting you. The agency was instructed to place anyone aboard who could be useful later through blackmail or manipulation. He leaned forward. The question is whether you were truly their random choice, or if someone helped arrange for you specifically to be here. No one arranged anything. I'm just trying to save my brother from his own stupid mistakes. And how long has he been making these stupid mistakes? When did the late-night calls for money start? Who exactly does he owe? The questions hit too close to Zara's own worries. Marcus had been acting strange for months. Jumpy, secretive, making excuses to avoid family dinner. Last week she'd spotted bruises on his arm, but he'd claimed they were from basketball. I don't know, she admitted quietly. He won't tell me. Mateo studied her for a long moment. Perhaps we can help each other, Miss Williams. I'll look into your brother's situation, and you'll remain my guest until I'm certain you're not a threat. Guest? Zara laughed bitterly. You mean prisoner? For the next 2 days, until we dock for my meeting with the Russians. After that, he shrugged elegantly. We'll see. He stood, opening a door to reveal a luxurious stateroom. You'll stay. Here. Everything you need has been provided. My staff will bring meals. And if I refuse? His expression cooled. That would be unwise. The alternative accommodations are far less comfortable. Zara walked into the stateroom, taking in the king-sized bed, marble bathroom, and another stunning ocean view. Mateo lingered in the doorway. Try to rest, Miss Williams. We have much to discuss tomorrow regarding your brother's predicament. The door closed with a definitive click of the lock. Zara sank onto the plush bed, her mind racing. What had Marcus gotten himself into? And how had she ended up trapped on a yacht with a man who could casually order people cleaned up with a single phone call? She moved to the window, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, New York was disappearing behind her, along with any hope of a quick resolution to this nightmare. 2 days until they docked. 2 days to convince Mateo she wasn't a spy. 2 days to figure out how to save both herself and Marcus from whatever dangerous games they'd stumbled into. The morning sun streamed through the stateroom's windows, but it wasn't the light that woke Zara. Angry voices echoed through the walls. Rapid Italian punctuated by what sounded like fists hitting a table. She sat up, smoothing her wrinkled clothes from yesterday, when the door swung open. Mateo filled the doorway, his expression tight with barely contained fury. Join me for breakfast! It wasn't a request. Zara followed him down the corridor to an elegant dining room. A spread of fresh fruit, pastries, and coffee covered the table, the domestic scene at odds with the armed men positioned at each entrance. Sit. Mateo poured coffee into a delicate china cup. We have more questions to discuss. I've told you everything, Zara said, proud that her voice remained steady despite her racing heart. And yet your brother's gambling debts trace back to establishments controlled by the very people trying to destroy my organization. His gray eyes studied her over his cup. Quite a coincidence. I don't know anything about that. Marcus never... She stopped, noticing something odd through the window behind Mateo. A flash of red, like a laser pointer. The dot settled on Mateo's chest. Get down! Zara lunged across the table, knocking Mateo sideways as gunfire shattered the windows. Coffee cups exploded, porcelain shards flying everywhere. Armed men in black tactical gear repelled through the broken windows. Mateo's security team responded instantly, the dining room erupting in chaos. Bullets sprayed across the yacht's pristine interior. Move! Mateo grabbed Zara's arm, dragging her behind an overturned table. He fired precise shots with a pistol that appeared from nowhere, taking down 2 attackers. A crew member caught a bullet in the shoulder, crying out as he fell. Without thinking, Zara crawled toward him, keeping low. She grabbed his good arm, helping him army crawl to better cover behind a heavy sideboard. Mateo, 3 o'clock! She shouted, spotting another attacker emerging from a service door. Mateo spun, eliminating the threat with 2 quick shots. Something hot sliced across Zara's upper arm as she dove behind a column. She pressed her hand against the burning sensation, fingers coming away red. The firefight seemed to last forever, but was probably only minutes. When silence finally fell, broken glass crunched under Mateo's shoes as he approached her hiding spot. "Let me see," he said, gently pulling her hand away from the wound. His touch was surprisingly tender as he examined the graze. "It's shallow, but it needs cleaning." He led her to a smaller dining room that had been converted to a makeshift medical station. Other injured crew members were being treated, but Mateo insisted on tending to Zara himself. She watched his face as he carefully cleaned and bandaged her arm, noting how his cold mask had slipped slightly. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "Twice. I couldn't just—" Zara swallowed hard. "I couldn't watch people die." "No, you couldn't." His expression turned calculating. "Which presents a problem?" "What do you mean?" "You've seen too much. My men, my enemies, an active war between rival organizations." He tied off the bandage with precise movements. "You're no longer just a suspicious caterer. You're a witness." Zara's stomach dropped. "I won't say anything. I just want to go home." "It's not that simple anymore." Mateo stepped back, his gentle demeanor fading. "You've proven you're not working for my enemies. No spy would save my life. But you've also become a liability I can't ignore." He walked to the window, staring at the horizon. "Plans have changed. We're bypassing the Russian meeting, heading directly to my estate outside Paris." "Paris?" Zara stood up too quickly, making her head spin. "No, I can't. My brother—" "Will be investigated thoroughly and protected if necessary." Mateo turned, his expression now pure steel. "But you will remain at my estate until I determine it's safe to release you." "You can't just— This is not a negotiation." His voice dropped dangerously low. "Your life is in my hands now." Zara felt the full weight of her situation crash down. She'd witnessed a mafia battle, saved the boss's life, and now she was being taken to another continent with no say in the matter. Yet somehow the most terrifying part wasn't Mateo's threat. It was the way her skin still tingled where his fingers had brushed while bandaging her arm. She sank back into her chair, watching Mateo issue rapid commands in Italian to his men. In less than 24 hours, she'd gone from planning a catering event to being caught in the crossfire of a mob war. Now she was sailing to Paris with a man who could order deaths with a phone call, yet had just cleaned her wound with the gentleness of a lover. Through the window, she could see crew members cleaning up broken glass and bloodstains, erasing evidence of the morning's violence. Like her old life, all traces of normalcy were being wiped away, replaced by a dangerous new reality where survival meant placing her trust in a man who dealt in death. Mateo finished giving orders and turned back to her. For a moment, something like regret flickered across his features. Then his mask of control returned, and Zara knew with certainty that her fate was sealed. Whatever game she'd stumbled into, she was now a permanent player, whether she wanted to be or not. The Paris evening air held a crisp bite as the motorcade pulled through ornate iron gates. Zara pressed her face against the bulletproof window, taking in the sprawling estate before them. Manicured gardens stretched into darkness, while security cameras tracked their movement with mechanical precision. The mansion itself rose like a limestone castle, windows gleaming gold against twilight shadows. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter with military efficiency, their weapons visible reminders of the world she'd stumbled into. Lorenzo, Mateo's head of security, opened her door with a grip that bordered on painful. His stone-faced expression never wavered as he escorted her up marble steps. Unlike the other guards, who simply ignored her, Lorenzo watched her every movement like she might sprout wings and fly away. "Mr. Visconti has business to attend to," Lorenzo stated flatly. "I will show you the permitted areas." The entrance hall alone screamed old money. Crystal chandeliers, priceless artwork, antique furniture that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. But Zara couldn't appreciate any of it. Every luxurious detail just emphasized her captivity in this gilded cage. Lorenzo's tour was methodical and clear. The kitchen, dining room, library, and east garden are accessible. The west wing, basement, and Mr. Visconti's office are strictly forbidden. He paused, dark eyes boring into her. The security system is state-of-the-art. Every door, window, and air vent is monitored. Escape attempts would be unwise. They reached her suite on the second floor. The space was larger than her entire apartment, decorated in cream and gold with a private bathroom featuring a massive soaking tub. A walk-in closet held designer clothes in exactly her size. The sitting room connects to Mr. Visconti's suite. Lorenzo indicated a set of double doors. He will see you when his business concludes. Left alone, Zara explored her prison. The windows wouldn't open more than a few inches. The phone was clearly monitored. Even the television seemed to mock her with its endless channels she couldn't focus on. Hours passed before voices drew her attention. Raised Italian echoed up the stairs, angry tones that made her pulse quicken. Against better judgment, Zara crept down the hallway, following the sounds to a partially open door. The scene inside stopped her breath. A man sat tied to a chair, face bloodied and swollen. Matteo stood over him, sleeve rolled up to reveal a forearm traced with scars. His voice was terrifyingly calm as he spoke in Italian, each word precise and cutting. The bound man blubbered responses, fear evident even in a language Zara didn't understand. Matteo's response was a backhand that snapped the man's head sideways. "You gave them the shipping routes," Matteo switched to English. "Your betrayal cost me 3 men." "Please, I didn't." The man's plea ended in a scream as Matteo drove something sharp into his thigh. "Every betrayal earns the same reward," Matteo continued conversationally, as if discussing dinner plans instead of torture. "Remember that when you see your brothers in hell." Zara stumbled backward, her heel catching on carpet. Pure survival instinct took over. She ran for the service entrance she'd noticed during the tour, fumbling with the lock with trembling fingers. Strong hands seized her shoulders, yanking her away from potential freedom. Lorenzo's grip was bruising as he dragged her back through the house. She fought uselessly against his iron hold until they reached Matteo's office. "Sir!" Lorenzo shoved her forward. "Found her trying to escape through the kitchen entrance." Matteo looked up from cleaning his hands, his expression unreadable. "Leave us." "She's a flight risk." Lorenzo tightened his grip until Zara gasped in pain. The change in Matteo was instant and terrifying. He moved with preternatural speed, grabbing Lorenzo's hand and snapping his index finger backward with a sharp crack. The security chief's stoic mask finally broke with a grunt of pain. "What's mine remains untouched," Matteo said softly, dangerously. "Remember your place." Lorenzo released Zara immediately, cradling his broken finger as he backed away. The door closed with a final click, leaving her alone with a man she'd just watched torture someone. "Sit," Matteo gestured to a leather chair. Zara's legs shook as she complied. "I won't tell anyone what I saw. Please just let me go." "You've seen how I handle betrayal." He leaned against his desk, studying her. "You've witnessed an interrogation, no faces in operations, heard conversations you shouldn't have. There is no leaving." "So I'm your prisoner?" Her voice cracked. "You're under my protection." He moved closer, forcing her to look up at him. "The people hunting me would torture you for information before killing you. The police would arrest you as an accomplice. Your only safety lies in remaining exactly where you are." Zara felt tears slip down her cheeks. "As your property?" "As my responsibility." His finger caught one of her tears, the gentle touch at odds with the violence she'd witnessed. "No one will harm you while you're mine. Not even my own men." Later, locked in her beautiful prison, Zara curled into a ball on silk sheets worth more than her car. The man who'd tortured a traitor and broken his lieutenant's finger to protect her was just down the hall. She was trapped in a web of luxury and violence, claimed as property by someone who dealt in death, yet touched her tears with surprising tenderness. The worst part? A tiny voice whispered that Matteo might be right. In this dangerous world she'd stumbled into, his possession could be her only chance at survival. Sunlight streamed through the French windows as Zara stirred awake. Her hand brushed against something solid. A sleek laptop and phone rested on her bedside table, accompanied by a cream-colored note in elegant handwriting. "For your use, monitored, naturally. Join me for breakfast on the terrace. M." She dressed in one of the designer outfits that had appeared in her closet, the soft fabric a stark contrast to her troubled thoughts. The terrace overlooked immaculate gardens where Matteo sat reading financial reports at a table laden with fresh pastries and fruit. "Did you sleep well?" He didn't look up from his papers. "As well as any captive could." Zara reached for coffee, noting how the fine bone china trembled slightly in her grip. "You'll find your devices have limited access. Enough for basic needs, not enough for complications." A phone call interrupted their tense exchange. Matteo's expression darkened as he listened, his knuckles whitening around the phone. The string of Italian that followed was clearly profanity. "Problems?" Zara asked when he hung up. "My hotels are being targeted." He ran a hand through his dark hair. "Someone's attempting to expose their true purpose." "Money laundering," Zara stated flatly. "Smart girl." His gray eyes assessed her. But more concerning is how they knew which properties to investigate. The information could only come from inside my organization. The arrival of a new figure interrupted them. Tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, he moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to power. "Cousin!" The man addressed Matteo in rapid Italian, barely sparing Zara a glance. "English, Alessandro," Matteo replied sharply. "Ms. Williams is our guest." Alessandro's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course! How inconsiderate of me!" Matteo leaned back, studying them both. "Actually, your timing is perfect. I've been considering how to handle our current situation." "The hotel investigations?" Alessandro's attention snapped to his cousin. "Among other things." Matteo turned to Zara. "You're an event planner. Your expertise could prove useful." "I don't understand." "The social season is beginning. Parties, gallery openings, charity galas. Perfect opportunities to gather information while appearing innocent. But I need a reasonable excuse to attend them all." Understanding dawned. "You need a girlfriend. A successful businesswoman who specializes in high-end events. Your presence would be natural, expected even." "And if I refuse?" Alessandro smirked, but Matteo silenced him with a look. "You've seen too much to simply walk away. But help me, and I'll ensure your safe return to New York with compensation that would set you up for life." The unspoken alternative hung heavy in the air. That afternoon, Zara found herself standing still as a renowned fashion designer draped fabric around her. The woman's assistants chattered in French, occasionally dropping interesting bits of gossip. Monsieur Visconti donated an entire wing to the children's hospital. But the last person who crossed him disappeared? They say he personally oversees his charity foundations. Ruthless in business, especially lately. The pieces painted a complex picture. A dangerous man capable of both calculated violence and surprising generosity. Evening found them at a gallery opening, Zara's arm linked through Matteo's. Her new dress whispered against marble floors as they moved through the crowd. She played her role perfectly, laughing at the right moments, offering intelligent commentary on the art while observing everything. She met key figures in Matteo's world. Elena Rossi, who owned shipping companies. Victor Petrov, whose steel factories supplied half of Europe. Isabella Romano, whose family controlled Naples ports. Each interaction felt like moving chess pieces, though she couldn't yet see the full game. Matteo played his part equally well. His hand remained possessively at her waist. His smile softened when he looked at her. He whispered private jokes in her ear. All for show, but convincing enough to make her heart race traitorously. The drive home was silent until Matteo's phone buzzed. His expression hardened as he read the message. "There's business I must attend to." He helped her from the car once they arrived at the mansion. "You did well tonight, but it was just practice. Tomorrow we begin for real." His intense gaze met hers, and Zara felt the shift. Their arrangement had moved from theoretical to dangerous reality. The game they would play could cost her everything if she made a wrong move. Guards escorted her to her suite while Matteo strode toward his office, already barking orders into his phone. Zara stood at her window, watching security teams mobilize in the courtyard below. Whatever news Matteo had received was serious enough to trigger immediate action. She touched the diamond pendant he'd given her to wear that evening. Beautiful, expensive, and like everything else in her new life, a gilded cage. She was now officially part of Matteo's world, playing girlfriend to one of Europe's most dangerous men while he hunted traitors in his organization. The night air carried the scent of roses from the garden below, the peaceful scene at odds with the controlled chaos of departing security teams. Somewhere in Paris, Matteo was handling business she probably didn't want to know about. Meanwhile, she was expected to keep playing her part, navigating a world of wealth and violence where one wrong step could be fatal. Zara jolted awake to Lorenzo's stern face looming over her bed. His usual stoic expression held a hint of impatience. "Pack what you need. You're moving to the hotel penthouse with Mr. Visconti. 10 minutes. The abruptness left no room for questions. Zara threw essential items into a bag, her mind racing. When she emerged, Matteo waited in the hallway, impeccably dressed despite the early hour. The ride to the hotel passed in tense silence until Matteo spoke. "There's a charity gala tonight. Several key players will attend, including those we suspect of passing information." "What exactly am I looking for?" "Unusual interactions. People who seem nervous or out of place. Your outsider's perspective proved valuable before." The car pulled into a private entrance of the Grand Visconti Hotel, a towering monument of glass and limestone. Security whisked them through hidden corridors to a private elevator. The penthouse took Zara's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Paris, designer furniture dotted the expansive living area, and fresh flowers perfumed the air, but her appreciation crashed when Lorenzo deposited their bags in the same master suite. "This isn't necessary," she protested. "I can take another room." Matteo's expression hardened as he pulled out his phone, showing her surveillance photos. Her heart stopped. Marcus, her baby brother, entering a known mob hangout in Harlem. "The Costello family controls that territory," Matteo said quietly. "Your brother seems to be making dangerous friends." The threat was clear. Play along, or Marcus pays the price. Throughout the day, Zara watched Matteo work from the suite's office. He conducted business openly in front of her, reviewing security reports, taking calls in multiple languages, examining financial documents. She began to understand the scope of his operation, legitimate businesses intertwined with criminal enterprises across Europe. "Why let me see all this?" she finally asked. Matteo glanced up from his laptop. "Because sometimes appearing to have a weakness draws out those who would exploit it. You're more valuable visible than hidden." The implied danger in his words sent chills down her spine. That evening, the ballroom glittered with Paris's elite. Zara wore a midnight blue gown that made her feel both powerful and exposed. She circulated with Matteo, observing the crowd while maintaining their couple facade. She noticed Christophe, the hotel's executive manager, halfway through the evening. Something about his behavior caught her attention. The way he tensed around certain Russian guests, his eyes darting nervously when they approached. "The man by the champagne tower," she murmured to Matteo. "He's trying too hard to appear casual." Matteo's hand tightened on her waist. "Christophe, I had suspicions." Later, as they swayed to a slow song, Matteo held her closer than their act required. His cologne wrapped around her, his warmth seeping through the thin fabric of her dress. She told herself her racing pulse was from fear, not attraction. "You're full of surprises, little spy," he whispered against her ear. "I'm not your spy?" "No?" His thumb traced circles on her lower back. "Yet you see what others miss." Back in the penthouse, they navigated their shared space with careful distance. Separate beds didn't eliminate the awareness of each other's presence. The suite felt smaller, more intimate in the darkness. Unable to sleep, they ended up on the leather sofa, sharing a bottle of wine. Matteo surprised her by discussing art, describing a Caravaggio exhibition he'd recently visited. His knowledge was extensive, passionate. "You know a lot about art for a criminal?" His smile held no humor. "I appreciate beauty in all forms. Music, poetry, art. They remind us there's more to life than power and violence." He recited a verse in Italian, the words flowing like silk. When she asked for a translation, his eyes held hers. "In the middle of the journey of our life, I found myself in a dark wood, for the straight way was lost." "Dante," she recognized. "That's rather dark." "It's honest. We all lose our way sometimes." Something shifted in that moment, a glimpse behind his carefully constructed walls. But before she could examine it, exhaustion claimed her. She woke hours later to an empty bed. Voices drifted from the balcony. Through the gauzy curtains, she made out Matteo's silhouette. "Watch Christophe," he commanded quietly. "But don't move yet. We need to know who he reports to." Sensing her presence, he turned. Their eyes met through the darkness, an unspoken current passing between them. In that moment, Zara realized how deeply entangled she'd become in his dangerous game, not just as a pawn, but as something far more complicated. He was a criminal who quoted Dante, a ruthless boss who donated to hospitals, a man who could order executions, then discuss art with genuine passion. And she was starting to see all of him, the darkness and the light, making it harder to remember he was her captor, not her protector. The morning sun streamed through the penthouse windows as Zara applied her lipstick, studying her reflection. Her hands trembled slightly, knowing what lay ahead. Behind her, Matteo adjusted his tie, his expression calculating. "Christophe will join us for lunch," he said, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "He doesn't know we suspect him." Zara set down her lipstick. "What exactly do you want me to do?" "Watch. Listen. People reveal more than they intend through casual conversation." He stepped closer, his cologne wrapping around her. "You have a gift for reading people. Use it." The hotel's restaurant buzzed with lunchtime activity. Christophe greeted them with practiced charm, though Zara noticed the slight tremor in his hands as he pulled out her chair. Other executives joined them, creating a veneer of normal business discussion. "The Russian delegation seemed pleased with their stay," Christophe mentioned, swirling his wine. Zara leaned forward. Oh, I noticed you speaking with them quite a bit at the gala. Do you handle many of our Eastern European clients personally? A flash of panic crossed his face before he composed himself. When required, customer service is our priority. Throughout lunch, Zara guided the conversation with subtle questions, watching Christophe's reactions. Each mention of certain clients made him tense. His eyes darted to specific exits. When discussing recent security upgrades, his fingers drummed nervously on the table. Mateo's hand rested possessively on her knee under the table, squeezing gently when she hit particularly revealing topics. The dual awareness of his touch and her dangerous game left her pulse racing. After lunch, they toured Mateo's other Paris properties. At each hotel, he conducted brief meetings while maintaining their couple facade. Zara found herself falling into the role with disturbing ease, touching his arm, sharing private smiles, leaning into him as he introduced her to staff. Outside the third hotel, everything exploded into chaos. The crack of gunfire shattered the afternoon calm. Before Zara could process what was happening, Mateo tackled her behind a parked car. His body covered hers completely as bullets pinged off metal around them. Lorenzo and the security team returned fire, their shots precise and devastating. When the shooting stopped, Zara realized she was clutching Mateo's shirt, her face pressed against his chest. His heart hammered against her cheek, the only sign that the attack had rattled him. He'd reacted instantly to protect her, using himself as a shield without hesitation. Back in the penthouse that evening, Mateo paced as he read intelligence reports on his phone. Your instincts about Christophe were right. He's been meeting with Sokolov's people. He reached for his phone, presumably to order Christophe's elimination. Without thinking, Zara grabbed his wrist. Wait! She surprised herself with her boldness. What if we use him instead? Feed him false information, see where it leads. Mateo studied her, something like admiration flickering in his eyes. You suggest turning him into a double agent without his knowledge? He's more valuable as an intelligence source than a corpse, at least temporarily. Hours later, they ended up on the penthouse balcony, sharing a bottle of wine. The city lights sparkled below, creating an illusion of peace that almost let Zara forget the afternoon's violence. My mother loved Paris, Mateo said unexpectedly, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. Before she died, she would bring my sister and me here every summer. We'd spend hours at the Louvre. Zara turned to look at him, struck by this glimpse of his past. The wine and fatigue had lowered both their guards. In the dim light, she could almost imagine him as that little boy, before violence and power had shaped him into the man he'd become. He met her gaze, the air between them charging with electricity. Slowly, he reached out to brush a wee strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered on her cheek. Zara's breath caught as he leaned closer, his intention clear in his darkened eyes. Just before their lips met, his phone buzzed. Lorenzo's name lit up the screen. Mateo pulled back with a curse, answering immediately. I have to handle something, he said, after hanging up. Before leaving, he hesitated. I want you to review the security footage from the hotels. Look for patterns my men might have missed. You see things differently. The trust implicit in this request stunned her. She watched him leave, her emotions a tangled mess. How could she reconcile the man who'd kidnapped her with the one who shared childhood memories? The ruthless boss with the protector who'd shielded her from bullets? The criminal who quoted poetry with the strategist who valued her insights? Her fingers touched her lips, still tingling from their almost kiss. The line between captor and something more dangerous to her heart was blurring. Even as her practical side screamed warnings, she couldn't deny the growing attraction, the way she was beginning to see past his carefully constructed facades. Moving to the laptop he'd left her, Zara pushed aside her conflicted feelings and focused on the security footage. She had a job to do, regardless of how complicated things had become. Zara woke to pale morning light, filtering through the penthouse windows. Mateo's side of the suite remained untouched, his absence weighing heavily in the quiet space. She tried to ignore the flutter of concern in her chest, focusing instead on the laptop and security footage he'd left her to review. Hours passed as she methodically studied the videos, making detailed notes. Around noon, a pattern emerged. A cleaning service appeared at irregular hours, always when specific guests checked in. The timing seemed deliberate rather than coincidental. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear Mateo return until his shadow fell across her screen. He looked exhausted, his usual pristine appearance slightly rumpled, a darkness lingering in his eyes that spoke of violence. You haven't slept, he observed, loosening his tie. Neither have you. Zara gestured to her findings. Look at this. The same cleaning crew shows up within hours of certain Russian guests checking in, but never during normal service times. Mateo's expression sharpened as he leaned over her shoulder, his presence warm against her back. "Show me everything!" She walked him through the pattern, noting how the crew accessed specific rooms multiple times. His jaw tightened as understanding dawned. "Lorenzo!" he called sharply. His security chief appeared instantly. "Sweep those rooms! Now!" Within an hour, they discovered sophisticated surveillance equipment hidden throughout the hotel. Mateo's enemies had been gathering intelligence right under their noses. That afternoon, Mateo summoned his inner circle to the penthouse's private conference room. When he gestured for Zara to join them, Alessandro's face darkened with barely concealed contempt. "Is it wise to include an outsider?" His smooth voice carried an edge of challenge. "The outsider found what your security teams missed." Mateo's reply was soft, dangerous. "Question my decisions again, cousin, and we'll have a different conversation." The threat hung heavy in the air until Alessandro lowered his gaze. The strategy meeting revealed the complexity of Mateo's operation, legitimate businesses intertwined with criminal enterprises, all under attack from rivals. Zara absorbed everything, offering occasional insights that earned approving nods from everyone except Alessandro. Later that evening, they attended an exclusive fashion show at the Palais de Tokyo. Zara felt eyes following them as Mateo guided her through the crowd, his hand possessive at the small of her back. "Mateo, darling." A stunning redhead approached, her Russian accent subtle but distinct. "How lovely to see you here." "Sophia." Mateo's tone remained neutral. "You remember my partner, Zara?" Sophia Romanov's perfect smile didn't reach her eyes as she assessed Zara. "Of course. How unexpected to see you still in the picture." The interaction crackled with unspoken history. Zara maintained her composure, but she didn't miss how Sophia's fingers lingered on Mateo's arm longer than necessary. During the show, Zara noticed one of Mateo's hotel managers, Marie, repeatedly texting someone while glancing nervously at their section. When she mentioned this to Mateo, his expression hardened. "That's the third potential informant you've identified," he murmured against her ear. "You're proving quite valuable." They proceeded to dinner at La Bay, where Mateo introduced her to legitimate business associates as his partner. The role felt increasingly natural, the way she anticipated his movements, how their hands found each other without thinking, their shared glances that conveyed entire conversations. Over exquisite courses paired with vintage wines, Zara found herself genuinely enjoying Mateo's company. His dry wit emerged when he relaxed, and his intelligence shone through as he discussed art and literature. Several times, she caught him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. After dinner, they walked along the Seine, the city lights reflecting off the water. The night felt almost normal until three men approached from the shadows. Mateo's transformation was instant. He shoved Zara behind him as the first attacker lunged. The fight was brutal but brief. Mateo moved with lethal grace, his actions precise and devastating. Within moments, all three men lay groaning or unconscious. "Are you hurt?" He checked her over carefully, his hands gentle despite the violence they'd just delivered. "I'm fine." Zara's heart raced, though whether from fear or adrenaline, or the way he touched her, she couldn't say. Back in their penthouse, the tension between them finally snapped. Mateo caught her arm as she passed, pulling her close. Time suspended as they stared at each other, the pretense of their arrangement falling away. When their lips met, it was like a match to gasoline. Zara wound her fingers in his hair as he backed her against the wall, kissing her with an intensity that made her knees weak. His hands roamed her body possessively, claiming every inch they touched. Just as suddenly, he wrenched away, breathing heavily. "Not like this," he said roughly. "Not until you know everything." Before Zara could respond, his phone rang. The transformation in his expression as he listened was chilling, all passion replaced by cold fury. "They found your brother!" Mateo's expression was granite as he stared out the penthouse window. "Your brother owes the Costello family $100,000. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She sank onto the nearest chair, her legs suddenly weak. "The timing is interesting," Mateo continued, his voice dangerously soft. "His debt comes due just as you end up on my yacht." "I swear I didn't know," Zara's voice cracked. "The yacht job!" "I only took it because the pay was so good. Marcus kept calling, needing money. I was desperate." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she explained Marcus's gambling addiction, how she'd depleted her savings trying to help him. "Check my apartment in Harlem. You'll find past due notices, declined loan applications, everything. I'm not lying. Matteo studied her for a long moment, his gray eyes unreadable. Lorenzo will stay with you. I'll verify your story myself. The hours crawled by as Zara waited under Lorenzo's watchful gaze. She paced the penthouse, stomach churning with worry for Marcus. When Matteo finally returned, his expression had softened slightly. Your story checks out. He loosened his tie. I've also resolved your brother's situation with the Costellos. Zara's relief warred with horror, knowing what that likely meant. Before she could respond, Matteo continued, We have the charity event at Casino de Paris tonight. Get ready. Hours later, they entered the opulent casino, Matteo's hand possessive at her waist. Zara wore a champagne-colored gown that sparkled under the crystal chandeliers. They played their roles perfectly, the powerful businessman and his gorgeous companion, while Matteo conducted meetings in private rooms. Between circulating with guests, Zara noticed Christophe, Matteo's hotel executive, slipping into a private room with two men she didn't recognize. She caught Matteo's eye across the room, tilting her head subtly toward the door. He gave an imperceptible nod and signaled Lorenzo. You're quite the observant little spy. Sofia Romanov's voice dripped with disdain. Zara turned to find the Russian beauty holding court with several socialites. Though I suppose that's why Matteo keeps you around. For now. I didn't catch that last part, Zara said sweetly. Perhaps you could speak up. Sofia's perfect lips curved. Let me be clear then. Matteo and I have history. Deep, passionate history. You're a temporary distraction, exotic enough to be interesting, common enough to be disposable. And yet here I am, Zara replied. While you're over here talking about me to anyone who will listen, seems like someone's feeling displaced. Color stained Sofia's cheeks. Before she could respond, Zara excused herself to the ladies' room. She was washing her hands when three men burst in. Her Harlem instincts kicked in instantly. As the first man grabbed for her, she drove her elbow into his solar plexus. The second received her knee to his groin. The third pulled a gun, but Zara was already moving, using a stall door as cover. Costello sends his regards, one wheezed. To both you and your brother. Zara grabbed a heavy metal trash can, hurling it at the gunman. The door burst open as Matteo and his men stormed in. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Pain blazed across Zara's arm as a bullet grazed her. Through the chaos, she saw Matteo execute her attackers with cold efficiency. Then he was beside her, checking her wound with gentle hands that contrasted sharply with his murderous expression. They'll pay for touching you, he growled, lifting her into his arms. All of them. He carried her from the casino, her blood staining his expensive shirt. Zara pressed her face against his chest, inhaling his cologne mixed with gunpowder. In that moment, despite everything, she felt safer in the arms of this dangerous man than she ever had before. Lorenzo cleared their path through panicked casino guests, his expression promising death to anyone who got too close. Outside, Matteo's security team had cars waiting. He placed her carefully in the back of an armored SUV, barking orders in Italian to his men. The bullet just grazed me, Zara assured him, though her arm throbbed. I'm okay. Matteo's jaw clenched as he examined the wound. You fought well. Where did you learn? Growing up in Harlem, you learned to handle yourself. She winced as he applied pressure, though usually against schoolyard bullies, not professional kidnappers. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You continue to surprise me, Piccola. His expression darkened again. But this attack changes everything. The Costellos were supposed to back off after our discussion about Marcus. What exactly did that discussion entail, Zara asked, though she dreaded the answer. Nothing they didn't deserve. His tone left no room for further questions. But clearly they need a stronger message. Through the tinted windows, Zara watched Paris blur past as they sped toward safety. Her arm hurt, her borrowed designer dress was ruined, and she'd just been targeted by a second criminal organization. Yet somehow, watching Matteo orchestrate their escape with lethal competence, she felt an impossible sense of security. The private doctor's hands were steady as he stitched Zara's arm. In the penthouse's living room, dawn hadn't broken yet, and Paris twinkled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Matteo paced behind them, firing rapid Italian into his phone while Lorenzo stood guard at the door. The wound is superficial, the doctor said, applying a bandage, but keep it clean and dry. Zara nodded, watching Matteo orchestrate what sounded like war preparations. His usual controlled demeanor had hardened into something colder, more lethal. He moved money, deployed men, and issued orders with ruthless precision. The doctor packed his bag and left with a respectful nod to Matteo. Once they were alone, Matteo stopped pacing. "There's something you need to know about Marcus." Zara's heart clenched. "Is he?" "He's alive. Safe. I have him protected." Matteo sat beside her on the sofa. "But he wasn't just gambling, Zara. He was dealing drugs for the Costellos." The world tilted sideways. "No, that's not possible." "He started small, campus sales to pay his gambling debts. Then they moved him up, had him handling larger amounts. But your brother..." Matteo's jaw tightened. "He tried skimming profits. That's why they're after both of you now." Tears burned Zara's eyes as memories crashed over her. Marcus's late-night calls, his nervous behavior, the expensive new clothes he couldn't explain. "I should have known. All the signs were there." "Stop!" Matteo's voice was unexpectedly gentle. He took her hand, his calloused thumb stroking her palm. "You saw what you wanted to see. We all do that with family." Something in his tone made her look up. Pain shadowed his gray eyes. "I had a sister," he said quietly. "Bianca. She was 17 when I was 18. Beautiful, brilliant, studying to be a doctor." His grip tightened on Zara's hand. "I was already involved in certain activities, but I kept her separate from that world, protected, until one day rivals decided to send me a message." Horror crawled up Zara's spine. "They killed her." Matteo nodded once, his face carved from stone. "That day, I learned that keeping people separate from our world is an illusion. The only protection is power. After Bianca died, I became what I needed to be to ensure no one could ever hurt someone I..." He stopped abruptly. Zara touched his face, feeling the muscle jump in his jaw. This glimpse of his pain, the love he'd lost, shifted something fundamental between them. He wasn't just her captor or protector anymore. He was a man who'd been shaped by loss, just as she'd been shaped by responsibility. "We need to leave Paris," he said, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "Both the Russians and Costellos will be hunting us now. I have an estate in the countryside, a vineyard that's been in my family for generations. We'll be safer there." They departed that afternoon by helicopter, soaring over the French landscape. Zara watched Paris disappear beneath them, her mind whirling with conflicting emotions. The pull she felt toward Matteo grew, stronger, even as her rational mind screamed warnings about who and what he was. Worry for Marcus gnawed at her, along with guilt over not protecting him better. The helicopter descended toward a stunning valley filled with orderly rows of grapevines. A magnificent villa crowned a gentle hill, its honey-colored stone glowing in the late afternoon sun. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, nearly invisible unless you knew to look. "Welcome to Chateau Visconti," Matteo said as they landed. He helped her from the helicopter, his touch lingering longer than necessary. They toured the estate, the centuries-old wine cellar, the modern security system seamlessly integrated into classical architecture, the beautiful gardens Matteo's grandmother had designed. The villa itself was a masterpiece of old-world craftsmanship and contemporary luxury. That evening, they dined in the vineyard. A small table had been set among the vines, twinkling with candlelight. The sun painted the sky in passionate purples and golds as they shared wine from Matteo's private reserve. "This was my favorite place as a child," he said, watching her savor the wine. "The only place I felt truly free." The way he looked at her made heat pool in Zara's stomach. When he stood and offered his hand, she took it without hesitation. They walked through the vineyard as stars emerged above them, the tension building with each step. In the master suite, Matteo kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. Their clothing fell away piece by piece as they explored each other with increasing urgency. He was gentle with her injured arm, worshipful with his touches, passionate in ways that surprised them both. Later they lay tangled in silk sheets, their breathing slowly returning to normal. Matteo traced patterns on her bare skin, his touch reverent. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "You're the first person who's seen me, not just the monster, since Bianca died." Sunlight streamed through the kitchen's arched windows, casting a golden glow over Zara and Matteo as they shared fresh croissants and espresso. She watched him move with easy grace, noting how different he seemed here, more relaxed, almost peaceful. Their night together had shifted something fundamental between them. "The bread's from the village bakery," Matteo said, spreading honey on a piece. The same family's owned it for generations. Zara sipped her coffee, savoring the intimate domesticity of the moment. It's hard to imagine you as a regular customer anywhere. You'd be surprised. His gray eyes warmed with amusement. Come, I want to show you something. They spent the morning exploring the estate's sprawling grounds. In the vineyard, Matteo explained the wine-making process with unexpected passion, his hands gesturing as he described different grape varieties. The ancient stone wine cellar felt like stepping back in time, with its oak barrels and bottles covered in decades of dust. My grandfather taught me everything about wine, Matteo said, running his fingers along a barrel. Before he died, he made me promise to preserve this place, no matter what path I chose. In the olive groves, they paused beneath gnarled trees that had stood for centuries. Matteo's expression grew distant as he spoke about his childhood in Naples, the grinding poverty, his father's brutal murder when Matteo was 12, the strategic choices that led him to power. We lived in 2 rooms above a butcher shop, he said. My father worked 18-hour days, but we could barely afford food. When the Calabrese family killed him over a gambling debt, I learned that honor means nothing without power to protect it. Zara touched his arm, sharing her own story, becoming Marcus's guardian at 19 when their mother died of cancer, working 3 jobs while building her business, the constant struggle to keep their heads above water. I thought if I just worked hard enough, played by the rules, everything would work out, she said. Now I'm not sure the rules were ever fair to begin with. Matteo pulled her close, kissing her forehead. The rules are written by people with power. I learned to make my own. Their peaceful afternoon was interrupted by Lorenzo's arrival with updates from Paris. Matteo's expression hardened as his head of security reported discovering more traitors within the organization. The Russians were pushing for a meeting, seeking alliance against the expanding Costello operations in Europe. Set up secure communications, Matteo ordered. I want to hear their proposal directly. Alessandro arrived as the sun was setting, carrying urgent files requiring Matteo's attention. While the men worked in Matteo's study, Zara explored the estate's north wing, filled with family portraits and antique furniture. In an old office, she found recent business documents that made her blood run cold, detailed plans for a massive development project in Harlem that would force out local businesses and residents, including her own building. Her hands shook as she read the proposals. Everything she'd feared about gentrification laid out in corporate language. Neighborhood revitalization, that really meant displacement. Market rate housing that would price out families who'd lived there for generations. When Matteo found her later, she held up the papers with trembling fingers. Were you going to tell me about this? He assessed the situation quickly, his face unreadable. The Harlem project was planned months ago, before we met. It's part of my organization's expansion into legitimate American business interests. Legitimate? Zara's laugh was bitter. There's nothing legitimate about destroying communities for profit. These are people's homes, their livelihoods. My home, my community. Business is business, Matteo said, but his tone lacked conviction. The project is worth millions. And what's my community worth? Zara demanded. The families, who've lived there for generations. The small businesses struggling to survive. Is this how you transition to legitimate business, by becoming another corporate predator? Something shifted in Matteo's expression. He moved closer, taking her hands. What if there was another way? A development plan that actually served the community? What are you saying? I'm saying I'll scrap the entire current project if you help me design something better, something that preserves the neighborhood while creating opportunities for residents. No displacement, no forced buyouts. Zara searched his face for deception, but found only sincerity. You'd give up millions in profit? Profit isn't everything. He pulled her against him. Help me do this right. Show me how to build something that matters. Their kiss was different from previous ones. Less desperate passion, more profound connection. When they finally broke apart, Matteo pressed his forehead to hers. You make me want to be better, he whispered. Not just stronger or more powerful. Actually better. Zara wrapped her arms around him, understanding that this moment marked a fundamental change in their relationship. They were no longer captor and captive, or even just lovers. They were partners in something larger than themselves. Dawn spilled through the vineyard estate's windows as Matteo's phone buzzed with urgency. Zara watched his expression darken as he listened to Lorenzo's report about a security breach in Paris. The muscles in his jaw tightened with each word. I have to return to the city, he said, after ending the call, his fingers trailing along her arm. It should only take the day. I'll be back by evening. Zara nodded, still wrapped in the warmth of their shared breakthrough from the previous night. I'll work on those alternative development plans we discussed. Minutes later, she watched from the terrace as his helicopter lifted off, disappearing into the morning sky. The estate felt different without his commanding presence, both more peaceful and somehow emptier. In the bright morning light, Zara settled at a desk in the villa's sunroom, sketching ideas for a community-focused development plan. Her pencil moved across paper as she envisioned spaces that would preserve Harlem's character while creating opportunities for residents, affordable housing integrated with market-rate units, small business incubators, community gardens. Around noon, seeking a break, she wandered into Mateo's study. His laptop sat open on the massive mahogany desk, emails displayed on the screen. One subject line caught her eye. Marcus Williams, status update. Her heart pounding, Zara sat down and began reading. With each email, her world crumbled further. The timestamps revealed Mateo had known about Marcus's involvement with the Costellos long before she ever stepped foot on his yacht. The trail of messages painted an ugly picture. She'd been a pawn from the start. One email from months ago made her stomach turn. The sister could be useful until we're done with the American situation. Zara's hands trembled as the truth sank in. Their entire relationship had been built on calculation, not chance. Even last night's intimacy felt tainted by this revelation. Before she could process the betrayal fully, security alarms blared through the estate. Zara rushed to the window, her blood running cold at the sight of armed men in tactical gear breaching the perimeter. Gunfire erupted as Mateo's security team engaged the intruders. "Miss Williams!" The elderly housekeeper, Marie, appeared in the doorway. "Come quickly! There's a passage! It's not safe here!" Zara's training as Marcus's protector kicked in. She grabbed her phone and shoved the Harlem development documents into her bag, along with papers detailing Mateo's operations that might prove useful. Following Marie through the kitchen, they reached a hidden door behind the wine rack. "The tunnel leads to the emergency garage," Marie explained, pressing a key into Zara's palm. "There are vehicles, money, everything you need to escape. Go." The passage was narrow and dark, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. Zara ran, her footsteps echoing off stone walls, the sound of gunfire growing more distant. After what felt like forever, she emerged into a large underground garage containing several luxury vehicles. As she rushed to the nearest car, movement caught her eye through the garage's security monitors. Alessandro, Mateo's cousin and lieutenant, was meeting with the Russians in the courtyard. The betrayal was clear in his relaxed posture and familiar greetings. He'd orchestrated this attack. Zara started the car just as another figure appeared on the screen. Mateo, returning far earlier than expected, her heart leaped into her throat as she watched Alessandro raise his gun. The shot sent Mateo crumpling to the ground as Russians swarmed the main house. Tears blurred her vision as she sped up the garage's exit ramp. The man who'd captivated her, infuriated her, and ultimately made her fall for him might be dead. Yet he'd also manipulated her from the start, using her brother's troubles to ensnare her in his plans. She drove for hours, taking back roads toward Paris, her mind spinning with everything she'd discovered. The documents in her bag could expose both Alessandro's betrayal and Mateo's operations. If Mateo was alive, Alessandro would hunt her to silence her. If Mateo was dead, she pushed away the sharp pain that thought caused. By nightfall, she checked into a small hotel outside Paris using cash from the escape vehicle. In her room, she watched news reports describing a gang-related shootout at a vineyard estate. No casualties were mentioned. Tears streamed down her face as conflicting emotions warred within her. Rage at Mateo's calculated manipulation from the beginning, fear of Alessandro's inevitable pursuit, and an unexpected grief that made her chest ache. The man who'd planned to use her had somehow become someone she cared for deeply, and now she might never know if his transformation had been real or just another layer of deception. Her phone displayed dozens of missed calls from unknown numbers. She turned it off, knowing she needed to focus on one goal, getting back to New York to protect Marcus. Everything else, Mateo's betrayal, Alessandro's treachery, and her own confused heart, would have to wait. The neon sign of the cheap hotel buzzed incessantly as Zara checked in under the name Sarah Wilson, her hands still shaking as she counted out euros from the emergency cash. The desk clerk barely glanced at her, more interested in his phone than the nervous woman before him. In her room, Zara tried Marcus's number for the 20th time, straight to voicemail. Her stomach churned with fear that Alessandro had already gotten to him. The room's shabby wallpaper and flickering lights matched her dark mood as she paced, her mind racing through possible scenarios. Dawn broke over Paris, painting the city in deceptively peaceful hues. Zara ventured out, constantly scanning her surroundings, flinching at every sudden movement. She found an internet cafe tucked away in a side street, choosing a computer with her back to the wall. The news reports were frustratingly vague. Disturbance at private estate outside Paris. Possible gang-related violence. Authorities investigating. Nothing about casualties, nothing about Matteo. Her hands hovering over the keyboard, Zara remembered Claudette, a high-end caterer she'd worked with during Fashion Week, someone with connections who might help her get home. After a brief email exchange, Claudette agreed to meet at a small bistro in the 7th arrondissement. The moment Zara spotted the men in dark suits entering from both doors, she knew she'd walked into a trap. Alessandro had predicted her moves, using her own network against her. She slid under the table as gunshots erupted, crawling toward the kitchen. The chef's startled expression turned to understanding as she burst through, pointing her toward the back exit. Zara ran through narrow alleys, her lungs burning, until she was certain she'd lost them. Slumping against a wall, she considered her options. They were running out fast. Then she remembered Sofia Romanov's cutting remarks at the casino, her obvious history with Matteo. If anyone might help out of loyalty to him. It took 3 hours, and all her event planning skills, to get a message to Sofia. The Russian's response was immediate but cautious, agreeing to meet in the private room of a Russian restaurant in Le Marais. Sofia looked exactly as polished as Zara remembered, but her perfect facade cracked slightly when speaking about Matteo. He survived the shooting, she said, stirring her tea. Alessandro's bullet missed anything vital. He's wounded, but hunting them both, Alessandro and you. I never meant, Zara started. Save it, Sofia. Cut her off. Alessandro has been playing everyone. He made deals with both the Russians and Costellos, promising each organization pieces of Matteo's territory. And now he has your brother. Zara's blood ran cold. Marcus? Where? An abandoned warehouse near the industrial port. He's using him as bait, waiting for you. Sofia's perfectly manicured nails tapped the table. I can help you leave the country tonight. New identity, new life. Zara closed her eyes, seeing Marcus's face, her baby brother, who she'd practically raised. I can't leave him. Sofia studied her for a long moment before reaching into her purse and withdrawing a small handgun. Then you'll need this. Don't hesitate to use it. The warehouse loomed against the darkening sky, its rusted metal walls holding who knew how many of Alessandro's men. Zara gripped Sofia's gun, her palms sweaty as she found a broken window to slip through. The interior was vast and shadowy, filled with abandoned machinery. She heard Marcus before she saw him, a muffled groan from the center of the space. Her brother sat tied to a chair, his face bloody and swollen. Alessandro stood behind him, gun pressed to Marcus's head. I wondered when you'd show up, Alessandro said conversationally. The devoted sister, always sacrificing everything for family. How fitting that it ends this way. Why? Zara asked, buying time as she assessed the situation. Why betray your own family? Alessandro's handsome face twisted with rage. Family? Matteo was nothing, a street rat my uncle took pity on. I was born to this, educated, groomed for leadership. Then he picked some Harlem party planner to share his secrets with, while I'm still treated like an errand boy. The first explosion of gunfire made Zara dive for cover. Through the chaos of shouting and bullets, she saw Matteo's men pouring in through multiple entrances. Matteo himself moved with deadly grace despite his obvious injury, gun blazing as he advanced. Alessandro grabbed Zara, yanking her up as a shield. Not another step, cousin, he shouted, pressing his gun to her temple. He fired at Matteo, who dove behind a concrete pillar. Time seemed to slow as Alessandro adjusted his aim, targeting Matteo as he emerged. Zara saw the moment Matteo chose, saw him step into the bullet's path as he took his shot. Both men fell. The warehouse erupted in fresh violence as Matteo's men eliminated the remaining threats. Zara ran to where Matteo lay, blood spreading across his chest. She pressed her hands against the wound, screaming for help. In the ambulance, machines beeped steadily as paramedics worked. Zara clutched Matteo's hand, watching his face grow paler. His eyes fluttered open briefly, focusing on her with effort. I never meant to keep you, he whispered, only to protect you. His eyes closed as the medical equipment began to blare urgent warnings. The Manhattan skyline glittered in the late afternoon sun, a sharp contrast to the dark memories of 6 months ago. Zara stood at the yacht's railing, her hand tracing the smooth teak wood as waves lapped gently against the hull. The same vessel that had once been her prison now felt different, transformed, like everything else in her life. Still hard to believe this is where it all started, she murmured, sensing Mateo's approach before his arms encircled her waist. His presence behind her was solid, protective without being possessive. Another transformation these months had brought. Mateo's recovery had been grueling. The bullet meant for her had collapsed his lung and nicked an artery. For 3 days, Zara hadn't left his hospital bedside. Their roles reversed as she became his protector. During those endless hours, watching machines breathe for him, she'd finally admitted to herself what she'd been fighting all along. She loved him, despite everything, because of everything. "You're thinking too hard," Mateo said now, his accent still sending shivers down her spine. The Italian lilt had softened somewhat from spending so much time in New York overseeing their joint ventures. "Just remembering," she replied, leaning back against his chest. "Everything's so different now." Indeed, the changes had been sweeping. True to his word, Mateo had restructured his entire organization. The legitimate businesses, hotels, wineries, shipping companies, now formed the empire's backbone. He maintained only enough underworld connections to ensure their safety, handling problems with surgical precision rather than widespread violence. The Harlem Development Project had been his first major shift. Under Zara's leadership, it evolved into a model of community-focused urban renewal. Instead of displacement, local businesses received support and renovation funds. Her old apartment building was restored, not demolished, with units reserved for original residents at controlled rates. "Your brother called earlier," Mateo mentioned, dropping a kiss on her shoulder. "He's maintaining straight A's this semester." Marcus's transformation had perhaps been the most remarkable. After the warehouse incident, he'd finally accepted help, completing an intensive rehabilitation program. Now he balanced college classes with part-time work at Zara's event planning company, which had exploded in popularity, though she carefully screened all clients these days. "He's teaching me about cryptocurrency investment," Mateo added with amusement. "Says I need to modernize my financial portfolio." Zara laughed, turning in his arms. The famous Matteo Visconti taking investment advice from a college sophomore? The famous Matteo Visconti takes advice from remarkable people. His gray eyes, once so cold, now held warmth when they looked at her. "You taught me that." The sun was setting now, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Below deck, they could hear the crew preparing for departure. A legitimate crew this time, no hidden gunmen or security teams, just a peaceful evening sail around Manhattan. "I have something for you," Mateo said, stepping back slightly. "Two things, actually." Zara watched curiously as he withdrew an envelope and a small black velvet box from his jacket. Her heart stuttered, recognizing the telltale shape of the box. "Open the envelope first," he instructed, handing it to her. Inside was a deed to the very yacht they stood on. Zara's eyes widened as she read her name listed as the owner. "Mateo." "The yacht where everything began," he said softly. "It seemed fitting that it should be yours." Before she could respond, he opened the black velvet box, revealing a stunning ring. The black diamond at its center caught the dying sunlight, surrounded by smaller white diamonds in an intricate pattern. "You once boarded this yacht by mistake," Mateo said, his voice carrying that blend of strength and tenderness she'd come to love. "Would you now choose to board it as my wife?" Tears blurred Zara's vision as she looked from the ring to his face. 6 months ago, she'd thought him a monster. Now she saw all of him, the ruthlessness and the honor, the violence and the tenderness, the businessman and the warrior. More importantly, she saw how he'd changed, not by abandoning his nature, but by channeling it into protection rather than destruction. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes." The ring slid onto her finger as Mateo pulled her close, claiming her lips in a kiss that held both passion and promise. When they finally parted, the last rays of sun painted everything in gold. "You showed me there was more to life than power and vengeance," Mateo murmured against her hair. "Now we build our empire together, my strength with your heart, and anyone who threatens that pays with their life."